When discussing the role of aviation in warfare, most people immediately think of bombers and fighter planes. Reconnaissance aircraft, however, are often overlooked, despite arguably playing an even more critical role. These aircraft are essential for identifying enemy positions and tracking troop movements. After all, what good are bombers if no one knows where to drop the bombs? Germany's answer to this vital need came in the form of the short-range reconnaissance aircraft Focke-Wulf Fw-189. Designed by the renowned engineer Kurt Tank, the Fw-189 initially faced skepticism from Luftwaffe officials, yet it went on to become one of the most effective reconnaissance aircraft of the entire war, repeatedly proving its value throughout its service on the Eastern Front. In the late 1930s, amid the rapid expansion of its air force, Germany introduced the high-wing Henschel HS-126 short-range reconnaissance aircraft into service. Although generally regarded as a capable design, its deployment during the Spanish Civil War revealed several shortcomings. One key issue was that the observer also served as the rear gunner, forcing him to switch between two essential roles depending on the situation. Additionally, while the aircraft's relatively low speed was beneficial for reconnaissance work, it left the HS-126 highly vulnerable to enemy fighters. These limitations made it clear that a third crew member was needed, along with a faster and more defensible aircraft. Early combat experience in Spain convinced the German military that the HS-126 would soon become obsolete. In response, the Reichsluftfahrtministerium, German Air Ministry or RLM for short, issued a request for a new reconnaissance aircraft in February 1937. The top priorities were a 3-man crew and excellent all-round visibility. 3 manufacturers advanced to the final stage of the competition: Arado with the AR-198, Focke-Wulf with the FW-189, and Blohm & Voss with the BV-141. Of the 3 designs, only the Arado followed a conventional layout. The FW-189 used a central glazed crew nacelle, flanked by 2 tail-boom mounted engines, while the BV-141 stood out with its radically asymmetrical configuration, one of the most unusual aircraft designs of the entire war. We already have a video on this bizarre machine, so be sure to check that out too. The Focke-Wulf design team, led by Kurt Tank, developed a twin-boom aircraft powered by 2 engines. Its central section followed a large, fully enclosed, heavily glazed fuselage to provide excellent all-round visibility. The paper proposal and supporting calculations were completed quickly and submitted to the RLM in February 1937. Although officials were initially hesitant about the unconventional layout, they ultimately approved the project and commissioned 3 prototypes. Work on the first prototype began in April 1937. It was equipped with 2 430 horsepower Argus AS410 engines, and by 1938 the aircraft was ready for testing. Kurt Tank himself conducted the maiden flight in July. The prototype performed impressively, revealing no significant issues. The second prototype flew in August 1938 and was primarily used to test armament installations, including machine guns and bombs. The third prototype followed shortly after and underwent flight trials in September 1938. After evaluating all 3 competing designs, RLM selected the FW-189 as the winner. Focke-Wulf began preparing for mass production, but the company was soon informed that the HS-126 would not be withdrawn from service. As a result, the decision to adopt the FW-189 was effectively reversed. Fortunately for Germany, Kurt Tank and his team chose to continue development despite the setback. This proved to be a wise decision, given that the combat operations during the campaign against the Western Allies in May and June 1940 clearly demonstrated that the HS-126 was outdated and urgently needed replacement by a more modern aircraft. And with nothing else ready for rapid development and production, the RLM once again turned to the FW-189. However, Focke-Wulf was already heavily engaged in designing and producing the new FW-190 fighter, making it difficult for the company to meet the production demands for the FW-189. As a solution, manufacturing was shifted to the aero factories in Prague and to several captured aircraft production facilities in France. Between 1939 and 1944, a total of 864 FW-189s were built. Interestingly, Kurt Tank himself nicknamed the aircraft Eile, or Owl. Allegedly, the inspiration for this name came from the shape of the cockpit. The RLM media referred to it as Das Fliegende Auge, or the Flying Eye, while those who operated on it in the front lines called it Uhu, Eagle Owl. The FW-189 was designed as a twin-engine reconnaissance aircraft. Its centrally positioned fuselage featured extensive glazing and housed the cockpit at the front, followed by a small crew area and gunner's station in the rear. Access to the crew compartment was provided through 2 hatches above the cockpit and a larger hatch at the rear. The wings were composed of 2 distinct sections, a central, square-shaped panel connecting the nacelle and engines, and an outer section extending outward from the tail booms. The wing structure used a metal base covered with duralumin, while the ailerons and split flaps were fabric covered. At the rear, the twin tail assembly consisted of 2 large rudders connected by a single long elevator. Power was provided by 2 465 horsepower Argus AS410A1 engines, which proved highly effective and reliable, even during the harsh winter conditions of the Eastern Front. The landing gear featured large main wheels positioned beneath each engine nacelle, with smaller tail wheels mounted under the elevator. The aircraft carried a crew of 3, the pilot, the navigator, and the rear gunner. The pilot sat at the front of the cockpit with the navigator directly behind him. In addition to navigation duties, the navigator operated the camera equipment, manned the upper rotating machine gun mount, and handled radio communications. The rear gunner served both as the aircraft's defense gunner and as the flight engineer. The Production 189's primary armament consisted of 2 forward-firing 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns operated by the pilot. Early aircraft featured a single dorsal machine gun and a rotating mount, while the rear cone-shaped rotating turret housed additional defensive machine guns, initially drum-fed MG-15s, later replaced by 4 belt-fed MG-81s. In addition, the FW-189 was equipped with 2 small bomb racks beneath each wing, typically used to carry 50-kilogram bombs, smoke canisters, or chemical containers, though the latter were never used in combat. The FW-189 was produced primarily in its original reconnaissance configuration, but several variants were adapted for specialized roles. At least 30 FW-189A1 aircraft were converted into night interceptors on the Eastern Front, intended to engage slow, low-flying Soviet biplanes. These conversions featured an airborne interception radar, recognizable by its forward-projecting antenna array, and a fixed MG-151 cannon mounted on an upward angle for attacking enemy aircraft from below. The FW-189A2 entered service in mid-1941 and was essentially identical to the A1, with the key difference being improved defensive armament, specifically 2 twin-mounted 7.92mm MG-81s. The FW-189A3 served as a dual-control trainer variant, produced in small numbers by converting early pre-production or prototype airframes. The A4 variant was designed as a light ground attack aircraft. It carried 2 forward-firing 20mm cannons and 2 MG-17 machine guns, and featured added armor to protect critical components like the engine, fuel tanks, and central fuselage. Production began in late 1942, though the total number built remains unknown. A handful of aircraft modified for operations in North Africa were fitted with dust filters and designated as the FW-189A1 Trop. Focke-Wulf also designed several additional variants that never entered large-scale production. Among them was the FW-189B, a purpose-built training model with a redesigned cockpit and dual controls, of which only a few examples were constructed. Another variant was the FW-189C, an attempt to repurpose the aircraft's airframe for ground attack roles. This model featured a small, cramped, but well-protected cockpit and was armed with cannons. However, it suffered from poor visibility and handling issues, which ultimately led to its rejection from service. The FW-189D was proposed as a naval variant equipped with twin floats. It was essentially derived from the FW-189B airframe, but the project saw no further development. The FW-189E tested the French GR-14M 700 horsepower engine. However, the prototype was lost in an accident while being transported from France to Germany in 1943. The FW-189F, based on the A2, was powered by the A's 411 MA1 600 horsepower engine, and used to evaluate electrically powered landing gear. Although these tests were successful, only 17 of these modified planes were built in 1944 before FW-189 production came to an end. An improved version, the FW-189F2, was planned with improved armor protection, but it never advanced beyond the proposal stage. The final variant, the FW-189G, intended to use the 950 horsepower AS402 engine, but also never reached production. The first FW-189s were delivered to various Luftwaffe experimental and training units, where they were evaluated to determine their performance and suitability for service. For example, the 2nd Training Squadron received 5 pre-production aircraft and conducted comparison flights against the HS-126. After a series of evaluation flights, the Fw-189 was declared superior in all aspects. Due to the slow pace of production, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, only about 250 Fw-189s were available, far too few to equip all reconnaissance units. As a result, the older HS-126 had to remain in service. It was only in 1942 when the Fw-189 began gradually replacing the HS-126 as the Luftwaffe's primary tactical reconnaissance aircraft. German records from September 1942 list 317 short-range reconnaissance aircraft in service. 174 of those were 189s. Combat experience on the Eastern Front revealed that, despite their delicate appearance, the 189s were remarkably rugged and able to withstand significant battle damage. On May 19, 1942, for example, a lone 189 was attacked near the Taman Peninsula by Soviet fighters. The left engine was hit so severely it tore completely off the aircraft. Yet the German pilot kept control and flew the crippled aircraft back to friendly territory, where he performed an emergency landing. Although the aircraft sustained further damage during that landing, it was repaired and returned into service. In one unusual incident near Stalingrad, a Soviet fighter pilot who had run out of ammunition rammed a 189 and managed to slice off its tail. By 1943, the Soviet Union's increased fighter production made short-range operations too dangerous even for the 189. Without fighter escort, such missions became nearly impossible to carry out. As a result, the aircraft was increasingly reassigned to ground attack duties against Soviet partisans, where it once again excelled. However, as Soviet air strength continued to grow, the 189's days in frontline service were numbered. By 1944, it was rarely used in its original reconnaissance role, and once detected, often became a priority target for Soviet fighters. Even so, it remained effective in certain theaters, such as Finland, where it continued operating until September 1944. Its only other secondary theater of deployment was North Africa, where it saw limited use. Around 30 Night Interceptor variants were assigned to 2 units, the 5th and 100th Night Fighter Squadrons, which served late into the war. Their mission was to counter the slow Soviet Po-2 biplanes that harassed German railway lines. The 100th Squadron became known as Eisenbahn-Nachtjagd, or Railway Night Hunt. In this capacity, the Fw-189 performed exceptionally well, shooting down numerous Soviet night bombers. Beyond reconnaissance, the Fw-189 also served as a light bomber and as a VIP staff transport. For example, one plane of the A-1 variant was used as personal transport by Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. By late 1944, most of the surviving Fw-189 aircraft were relegated to training duties. During the later stages of the war, the Hungarians received more than 28 189s. Despite the relatively small number, they were used extensively by the Hungarian forces. The Slovaks acquired 14 aircraft between 1942 and 43, employing them in the Crimea. Bulgaria also received several Fw-189s, which were deployed on the Eastern Front. In addition, 11 aircraft were delivered to Romania, where they were used mainly for training, though most were later captured by advancing Soviet forces. By the end of the war, only a handful of 189s had survived. The British captured one in working condition, and it was extensively tested by Captain Eric Brown, the chief test pilot of the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. He described the aircraft as a versatile little beauty to fly and a great asset to the German Army's ground troops. This concludes our look at the German short-range twin-engine reconnaissance aircraft, the Fw-189. What are your thoughts on the German Watchful Eye? Did Kurt's tank deliver yet another impressive engineering achievement? Let us know in the comments below. If you're interested in more unusual or lesser-known German aircraft designs, be sure to explore the rest of our videos on the channel. And if you enjoy what we do, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. You can also check out our extensive collection of articles over at plain-encyclopedia.com. Thank you for watching.